the Hagmann Hagmann Report for today. It is a terrific Tuesday edition. It's Tuesday, April 28th, 2015. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me in studio is my son, fellow investigator, fellow researcher, Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann Hagmann Report. Our job is to bring you the news that shapes the headlines, not what you see on television or hear on the partisan talk radio networks. No, the news that is being shaped and twisted, convoluted, and hidden amid a funhouse of smoke and mirrors and a carnival that we do call the corporate media. We'll do the headline and news triage so you don't have to. We'd like to thank all of our new listeners for checking in with us from all over the world. Thank you so much. We appreciate all of the emails. We don't have time to respond to all of them, but we certainly read them all. For our new listeners, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. Our home base on the internet is hagmannandhagmann.com. That's two N's and the word "and" spelled out. So hagmannandhagmann.com. We're simulcast by the Christians United Broadcasting Network. If you go to hagmannandhagmann.com, there you can pick up links to all of our live shows. You can pick up the links to our social networking sites and our archive, everything. And you can listen live via our website. Tonight we're going to be piercing that particular fog of disinformation, misinformation, and misdirection, helping you see what's important but are not meant to see. Joe, we've got so much to go over tonight. The world is on fire tonight, isn't it? Today? I mean, the world is on fire.
I think it's being extinguished. Last night it was a little bit on fire. But no, there are some serious things going on. We have, and may have, again, unrest in Baltimore yesterday. There's a headline on Drudge they call race riots. There were a huge amount of protests that broke into violent riots yesterday in Baltimore. We had a 8.1 earthquake go off. I need the name of this location. I don't want to say Nepal.
That was Nepal before.
Almost
in Kathmandu and
4,400 confirmed last time I heard, which is earlier today. Up to 10,000 feared dead.
A lot of not that this is more important than lives lost, but a lot of ancient artifacts have been destroyed from the earthquake, and to me that's kind of there's kind of a message being sent there. Not that there's anything. Again, I'm not trying to diminish the life loss, but I think you're seeing a divine reset take place here, and some level of judgment take place as well. And people might say, what did people of Nepal ever do to warrant judgment? Well, to me, it's just judgment.
Well, it definitely speaks to the time that we live in. Also, we have an Iranian ship has intercepted an American ship and is holding it, quote unquote, hostage, if you will say that. Iran seizes cargo ship, Pentagon sends destroyer. We have economic news. We have news from the Pope. We have intergovernmental news. One piece here from Obama warns of anti-globalization sentiment in both parties to Obama, U.S., and Japan leading the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, which bypassing Congress to destroy the sovereignty of the United States, which has already been destroyed.
Well, we have to get into that.
But like Bin Laden, apparently you can destroy it more than once.
Yeah. Well, and it's to me as we scan across the landscape of headlines, it's pretty somber when you look at things. And I was out several times today, and you look at people, and I just don't think people are getting it. I don't think people are getting the direness, the lateness of the hour. Now, some people are, but to me, I think people are living in this fantasy, this level of denial where, hey, we're working, we got things to do, life is normal, Starbucks is open, let's go get food, and everything is relatively okay. I mean, things are not great. They know that, they can feel it, but they're denying a lot of things. One of the things that's on my mind, that's been on my mind, I spoke with Greg Jackson on Sunday, and I came had I had the capability or ability. I shouldn't say capability. I had the capability, but had I had the time, I was thinking about doing a special Sunday show on this, and it just didn't come together.
Is this the homosexual marriage that the Supreme Court is set to rule on? Religious leaders are calling on members of the Supreme Court's liberal wing to recuse themselves from the blockbuster gay marriage case that the court will begin to consider today. And
right, they heard 2.5 hours of oral arguments today.
And this article is talking about the demanding that liberal justices sit out. They're calling for Supreme Court justices who have stood over and carried out ceremonies of gay marriages.
Kagan and Ginsburg, two of them,
to recuse themselves.
Right, which they're not going to. And and I would. Here's what I believe. Okay,
it's like the president sitting out. I'm not going to decide this war. I'm not going to make this. You guys go ahead. I'll recuse myself.
Well, after talking with Greg Jackson, and of course, not too long ago, Greg had an 89-word expose on our website, and there's also YouTube that is going around. But we're going to hit this hard tomorrow because this is so important, because this is tied to, if you go back to 1973, Roe v. Wade, and I really, perhaps we should make this a program rule. And this is tongue-in-cheek, more or less, okay? But there is no such thing as gay anything, except unless you're talking about some level of happiness or joy, okay? Because words, see, to me, this is one of the big problems that Americans and Westerners in general are facing. The language has been redefined. Now they're attempting to redefine our culture and our lifestyle and the meaning of everything. So we have to be very specific when we talk about homosexuality and lesbianism. Homosexuality and the transgendered agenda. But see, what people are not understanding is this. What we're seeing today happen today with the Supreme Court. It didn't just happen with the states banning homosexual marriage. This is not, it came before the court because of states banning homosexual marriage. However, the agenda began with Kinsey. Remember Alfred Kinsey back in the 50s, the Kinsey experiments. The Kinsey, big sexual doctor, and he had all of these experiments. Again, we're going to be getting into this in depth tomorrow, but people really have to understand, I believe, Joe, that what we're seeing today is the end game of an agenda that was put into motion that ties together the communist agenda, and people might laugh at this, and if they do, that's fine. But do your research. I've read. And Joe can attest to this right now in our studio. It looks like a library puked up books, okay? Because there are books everywhere, open to different sections. But we did so much research on this, on the homosexual agenda. This is extremely important to understand where this came from, and who the allies are with respect to this. But my belief is this. I believe that the Supreme Court is going to rule along partisan lines.
I believe they're going to rule along secular lines, along the wishes of the 2%, of the 1.5%, along the political correct, non-hateful, equal action, whatever you want to call it.
Well,
just like you're saying, they're going to rule in favor of homosexual agenda, equating it to a civil right
that doesn't exist.
Exactly.
And we all have to remember, and Greg does a marvelous job pointing this out, and I am preparing this for exposure tomorrow. I'm going to have this all laid out tomorrow. The reason I didn't do Sunday in addition to some time issues, some extremely sensitive things that were happening on this past weekend that I really don't want to get into, but I had to take care of some things. But it was probably good because tomorrow, when you hear the truth behind this agenda, it touches every part of your life. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't care if you know someone who's homosexual or if you don't. It doesn't matter if you think homosexuality and homosexual marriage is the least important of all issues facing us today, and if you think it's just a mere social issue, tune in tomorrow, because I'm going to tell you exactly why that's incorrect. I'm going to tell you why this will be the Roe v. Wade squared, or to the 100th power, because come the end of June, when the Supreme Court decides in favor of homosexual unions, the gates of hell will open up on Christians and on middle-class families. And if you fail to see the connection there, well, just tune in tomorrow. But I just want to let people know that this, what's going on in Washington, is no small matter, and has been planned. They have been working the lobby that is funded by people in Hollywood, funded by scientists, by doctors, by special interest groups, by communists, by politicians. The 300 conservatives who filed the amicus brief in favor of homosexual ruling. 300 conservatives. Okay. Yeah, we're going to name them all. If you didn't see that amicus brief that was filed, 300 conservatives. The pastors who are saying, yes, we should allow this because we shouldn't. Well, it's the policy of inclusion. The Vatican, the Jesuits, the real core issue behind this that includes polygamy, that includes pornography, that includes pedophilia, that reaches in every level of our society. This is a very critical moment in our history. And if my parents were alive, and even to some extent, I should have been paying more attention in 1973, although being young, of course, I should have been paying more attention. But I would really like to ask my parents, where were you? What did you do? Because I know you didn't believe in abortion. Why didn't you say anything? Because, well, if we don't say anything now, if we don't do anything now, and I will recommend this, we as a people, as a Christian group of Christians, as a Christian remnant, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot afford to obey this law. The law or the ruling by the Supreme Court, when it goes against biblical law, is not a law at all. Again, Greg Jackson speaks to this very well on this. Tomorrow's broadcast will include an audio clip from that Greg Jackson had created. But when you've got a Supreme Court ruling that goes into this, or that rules against the law of God, it is not a law that we should follow or obey. And we should obey it to prison if necessary, or disobey it to prison if necessary. There are a lot of tentacles to this, and the judiciary, has been infiltrated. And out of the three branches of government, and Greg Jackson pointed this out to me as well, that judiciary is the least, or should be, or is classified as the least important or potent of the three branches. The judiciary was never designed to create law, which is what they're doing. Not at all. And that's exactly what they're doing through activism. And if you follow the money on the judicial activism, you'll see exactly where this all leads to and what the end game objective is. And it does tie, and people think, like yesterday's program, people were saying, well, out of all the stuff that's going on, the giants and the fallen angels, well, how does that relate to what's happening today? That is the core of what's happening today. That's the impetus for what's happening today. And if you
biblically, Jesus mentioned 2 times in the past, which would be like the times in the future. He mentioned, as in the days of Noah, so too shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man, and also as in the days of Lot.
Yes.
And in the days of Lot, that was Lot living in Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abraham and the angels coming to retrieve him and his family from Sodom and Gomorrah before destroying the whole thing. And Noah, the days of Noah, we know that fallen angels, came down to earth and mated with women and made giants, and the giants became unsustainable by humans and became flesh-eating monsters that devoured mankind, and mankind thought nothing but evil continually, so they were wiped out. Those 2 examples are the examples we are given and told that would be happening again when Jesus Christ returns for his millennial kingdom.
Precisely, and as I sit back and I'm looking at all these books, and I'll tell you what, I was up at 5:30 this morning. Went to my office and opened up the books and was reading, and I've got a notebook full of notes, and of course, monitoring what's going on in Baltimore and the Supreme Court and the clashes in front of the Supreme Court, and of course overseas things. And I'm looking at this, and I just had to sit back. I had to sit back, and I had to think. I just thought, I knew when I started paying attention to things like 79, really started paying attention to international politics with the hostage crisis in 79. I knew that we were headed for a very, very rough time in the near future. But I never really thought that I would see what I'm seeing today. And I got to tell you, it's I brought my dog with me to the office, and thank goodness for puppy dogs and flowers, right? Because you can look at them and talk with your dog, and I guess it's just things are heavy. Things are very heavy right now. But anyway, tomorrow night we're going to be getting into that, and this goes back to the Tavistock Institute. This goes back to, there are so many tentacles to this. You've got to know the truth. And you've got to know the charlatans who are speaking out, proponents of this, in saying that this is about equal rights and about or homosexual marriage. It's not about that. It's not about that. This is a direct attack on the family. It's a direct attack on our Christianity. And what's going to happen, folks, the ultimate, and I'll just give you a little spoiler alert for tomorrow. We're going to tell you how this ruling will criminalize, will make Christians criminals. You want to know how Christians will be imprisoned and muzzled? This is how, through this ruling. Of course, there will be help as well. And it's interesting because look at the rise of ISIS and Islam, right? And look at how Islam handles homosexuality. Joe, they're open and tolerant of homosexuals, aren't they?
They have gay pride parades all the time.
Yeah, that's what I thought. The ISIS float. Don't be surprised if you see an ISIS float in the Rose Bowl parade next year, the way Obama's going. And the other part, too, Obama's role in this. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, we interviewed Larry Sinclair. I will bring that interview back up again because it's relevant to what we're talking about. Obama, I believe, and I've said this before, Obama was chosen to lead us into this area of this era. I shouldn't say area, this era. And he's doing it. And it's interesting, Judy McLeod from Canada Free Press wrote an article, and I'm straying a bit, but that's okay, titled, it was just published yesterday, W, meaning George W. Bush, rips O, meaning Obama. What's wrong with that picture? Very succinct article from Canada Free Press from Judy McLeod. And she's taken George W. Bush to task over, well, basically, what took you so long? But I'm going to go a step further here. With all due respect to Judy McLeod, who I think is an excellent investigative author, researcher, and journalist, I just really think a lot of her. And I'm going to just bump Judy a little bit and say, you know what? Let's go back. And I've talked to her about this, and she agrees. Let's go back to both of them being on the same plane for the same team. That's all. I mean, it's because George W. Bush and his father, George Herbert Walker Bush, none of them said anything about his eligibility. None of them had said anything that demanded accountability for his previous or for his past. Well, let me stray just for a second here, because something just. I just want to say this. We're talking about a lot of heavy things, and I know we've got a lot of listeners who are alone and who are elderly, infirmed, and just feel like, my gosh, I just can't take it anymore. And I felt that way earlier today, and there's nothing. I mean, I'm not infirmed. My son might think I'm elderly, but not really. So I took my dog for a walk, and a long walk. And sometimes I think that the walks are proportionate to the heaviness that I feel. She's still sleeping off the walk, by the way.
I doubt that.
But, well, the thing a couple of things. I just want to tell you, it doesn't matter if you've got a family, a great big family, and have all the support that you need, or if you're alone. I just want to tell you that, I hope you know that both Joe and I feel, and I feel very close to every listener, even if we don't know each other personally. I feel close to the people listening because, we're all in this soup together, and we all have our issues, our medical problems, our scheduling problems, the roof leaks, the car needs repairs, the gas payments late, we all. I mean, am I hitting you all understand what I'm talking about? Am I hitting the right notes, ladies and gentlemen?
Yeah.
Okay, and sometimes it just gets so overwhelming. Why do I even listen to programs like this? Because I got enough problems.
And nothing against anybody else and their shows. For the most part, I mean, especially in the mainstream, except for the exception of the car ride over here, I'll turn on Fox News or MSNBC radio just to hear their talking points on whatever the main headlines are. But I've tuned out most shows altogether. I'll listen to clips from Pastor Begley and Paul McGuire YouTubes and catch Alex Jones clips here and there. But I guess I used to be a sports radio junkie, and when we would travel out of town, and this is back out of high school in my younger days, I used to listen to Jim Rome all the time.
Oh, I remember that. I couldn't stand it.
We had battles of the radio in the car, especially when we travel. And you'd like to listen to Rush Limbaugh or
back then I did, yeah.
Michael Savage, and I'd want to listen to Jim Rome and any other sports show that was on. And I remember one time in the car, and my dad saying to me, what do you get out of sitting here listening to somebody talking about games for 3 hours that have no meaning on life? If you're going to listen to something worthwhile. And I'm like, all right, whatever, old man. I get it. You like your politics, and that's fine. And
he was actually more respectful than that, but okay.
I hated politics back then, and it never grew on me, thankfully. But then I changed, and we started listening to the current events and the Rush Limbaughs, and we started listening to Rush Limbaugh. At least I did. I remember he did this campaign to vote for Obama in the primaries against Hillary to beat the Clinton machine.
Oh, I remember that.
And I started listening to Glenn Beck and all these people back then, and Alex Jones is somebody who I listened to regularly. Once I started listening to him, that really opened up many avenues for me to research and to go out on my own and to lessen the voices that I let into my mind. But the more that we listened to these radio shows, the more it was evident that people always wanted to talk about the problems of the world and never offer any solutions aside from what their own ideological, political, right or left paradigm allowed for. No mention of Jesus, no mention of the Bible, no mention of the root of the problems being evil, from the devil to our own human nature, no mention of anything, of any real important truth. And, we're talking a series of years where you go from listening to politics, not really understanding much about how the real world works, to having a better grasp on it than most people. And I'm not saying that at any pride, but just when you're an investigator, when you're paying attention, when you're trained to find and spot anomalies and coincidences and things that are not correct, and the more these jump out at you, you have as an investigator, you have a drive, even if it's, we could have been working a workers' compensation case, and all of a sudden, we'll say a treasure hunt we came across, as an investigator, you're going to want to look into whatever it is that is the mystery.
That's
and
right.
So, as the mysteries start piling,
it's inherent in you, or you.
Right.
It's both a conditioning process as well as it being inherent. Go ahead.
Right. Well, when you're, a youngster and you're brainwashed into being an investigator by forced child labor. No.
Yeah, that's true.
But no, really, the investigative part. If you were an investigator, I don't think my mind would work anywhere near the way it does today. Not that it works better or worse than anybody's, but it just thinks differently.
That's right. And again, like you said, not that that's either good or necessarily good or bad. It's just the way that you've been conditioned to work, or conditioned to think, I should say. But you know what? When you were talking,
the whole point of that was, the more that I learn, the more that I read, and the more I pray and understand, the less I want to hear people. And it's not that I don't like them, because I do. I do, like I said, tune into Pastor Begley, especially when he has a YouTube video where he's talking about a certain, like Jade Helm will say, a certain issue. Or Paul McGuire when he does his videos from the...
You might want to clarify.
Santa Monica, the ocean in the background, and he's doing his talks. He's very articulate.
Right.
But it's hard for me to sit down, and I'll turn on shows and listen to whole shows, but that's usually when I'm doing stuff around the house. I don't intently sit and listen unless it's something that I want to hear somebody else's opinion on.
Right, but when you say you don't want to hear other people,
I don't want to...
I want to clarify that a little bit.
It's not that I don't want to hear other people. I guess I want to understand and have my mind figure out what I believe and know, and I want the Lord's truth to be imparted in me before I put other people's voices in my
right.
head. I don't want to confuse myself.
To your credit, and because I actually fought you on that when we were developing this show, and why too heavy on the scripture? Why so heavy on the scripture? In a analytical news show, and of course, hey, Steve Quayle, Pastor Langford, you set me straight pretty quickly with respect to why, and of course that is why. That is the why.
Well, to me, it was just like you were looking at it from a different perspective, and me, I understood that all of the issues, both good and bad, are explained in the Bible, and it doesn't matter. I've read the Bible so many times, but I feel like I've, only opened it one or two times. It seems like the more you read, the less you know. The more you understand, the less you can articulate and explain. But if I was going to hear from anybody, if I was going to learn from anybody, I wanted it to be from the Lord, and that's the whole purpose. And I think that we're so far away from anybody being, we have a small remnant left, but aside from that, people are generally secular, Christian secular, atheist, or agnostic. They have no belief.
Right.
And we are in a time where people who are the remnant are getting stronger and stronger, yet the rest of the world are vehemently opposed to Christ and are becoming offended just by his name.
You know, I saw that as well over the last couple of days. If you want an education, and you don't have to do this. I mean, we've done this, but feel free to do so. Just go on two diametrically opposed sites politically, and the only two the two that come to mind that are the heavyweights apparently in the internet, in the sphere of the internet. On the right would be Free Republic, on the left would be Democratic Underground. Okay, these are forums where people can actually go to, and people post news stories, and then others, members of the two different opposing
like
camps.
The Washington Examiner, or the Raw Story, or I mean.
But they post
Huffington Post or Fox News.
Right, but man, I guess what I'm saying is, 10 years ago, you would see this. To me, 10 years ago, you would see this conservative nature on, for example, Free Republic, even though it was kind of like a faux conservative. It wasn't true conservatism. It was just party line Republican. But they were somewhat tolerant, or the religious part. When I say religious, the Christianity, it was apparent, and it was not antagonistic. It was not anti-Christian. But even today, conservatives are becoming very anti-Christian, anti-religious, and anti-Christian. Now, on the far left, with, for example, Democratic Underground, that existed back then. But if you read it today, the vulgarity, the viciousness, the absolute hatred, and see that word hatred of anything Christian is so apparent. It is. I would say it's obsessive among many posters.
Do you ever hear the saying pertains to atheists? They say to atheists, how does it feel to talk about God all the time? But yeah, I mean,
yeah.
It seems the people who, we have all these, with the increase of technology and the increase of information that is spread throughout this technology, has come an influx of new theories and new ways of, I guess you'd say, exacerbating the lie and twisting it. Like the old Babylonian mystery religions are now the New Age.
There you go.
They're the same, it's like Pepsi and Coke. They've bottled up the same lie and just repackaged it under a different name. And as those continue to fan out to, you have one truth, you have one Messiah, one gospel, one true word of God. But then that doesn't change unless, you start getting into other Bible verses and not keeping to, the Greek and Hebrew root words. But the point is that you have, what do we see now? We talk about it all the time, ancient alien astronaut theorists. They're coming up with all these quote-unquote new theories on creation or evolution, and it's just so disturbing because so many people are clinging to all these new theories. One, because I believe they've never heard and have heard or reject the story of Jesus, and two, because they know the story of Jesus is true, that he is the only living God, and they are afraid and don't like that. And they don't like that because of what it means for them, and that's very selfish. But people will learn the hard way.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're right on the money.
But to this gay marriage Supreme Court decision, this
don't forget, tomorrow night we're going to hit that hard. But go ahead, sir.
They talk about here in this article about Ginsburg and Kagan recusing themselves. They say these justices, knowing full well the unique legal issues regarding the definition of marriage, would soon come before them, deliberately officiated so-called homosexual wedding ceremonies, creating not merely the appearance of bias, but an actual and blatant conflict of interest. Now, my question, it would be a legal question, is, say we did have laws that these people had to follow.
Okay, if there was, wait a minute, give me an example.
Okay,
like,
well, say one of the Supreme Court judges is, what would be a good example of this in another case situation? I'm not sure. Somebody who has presided and chooses to preside over the same, obviously in favor of it. Elena Kagan is a homosexual herself. How does the conflict of interest get? Is there any due process to see that this conflict of interest could be rectified, that they could be recused, or is that just wishful thinking?
No. It's at this point it's wishful thinking. And Greg Jackson, again, and I want to thank Greg if you're listening. Thank you so much for the information that you've imparted to me. In his book, Conservative Comeback to Liberal Lies. Now, admittedly, when he wrote that book, of course, he was of a different mindset with respect to his political leanings. But Federalist Papers, Federalist number 78. Right now, to answer your question, do we have any? I guess your question is, do we have any redress as citizens against judicial activism?
Not that it would change the ruling of this or the history of the rulings, but
we have to. Greg had spoken on this, and we have to fight at the local level, or at more of the local level, and start calling for recalls and voting. And I know this sounds really trite, voting people out, because is it later than we think? Absolutely, I think it is. And is it going to matter in the end? You know what? It may not matter, but if you sit on the sidelines and say it doesn't matter and do nothing, it's kind of like, to me, and I don't want to stray. Well, maybe I should. If your house is on fire and there's a garden hose or two, you're going to try to put it out. You can say it might be fully involved, and it might be like, pardon the expression, peeing in the ocean, okay, in terms of making a difference, as if that's going to raise the water level of the ocean. But at least you're proactive in doing something. You're actually trying to do something, or doing whatever you need to do. So it to me, it's our moral, and it's our Christian responsibility to do something. And by doing something, I'm saying, number one, we do whatever we can within the confines of the law to get rid of the very people that are in power that have made these changes.
Well, now, this brings up another question. Does the Constitution and the changes in the laws we live in today, would it allow for this? I mean, for this to be ruled a success for gay marriage to be legalized, per se?
Homosexual marriage, is that not constitutionally protected? No.
Where in the Constitution does it? I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate here. Where in the Constitution does it say that two same-sex couples shall not be married? I guess is my and this is what has been done through the confounding of the language and through the twisting of laws.
The twisting of laws in particular. Okay.
And this reminds me of
states' rights too. Well,
and Babel, back to the language issue.
We can take it. Yeah, we can take it there. But even when you look at how the Roman Empire, the courts were set up back then.
Right.
Okay. Well,
and that's the law, Justinian law, I believe, is the Greek or the ancient. I have the
right.
The PDF here. It's Roman civil law. And Rome was an empire. Rome was a republic. It had a Senate, representatives that spoke for the people. It was the not the first republic, but the first major republic that lasted as long as it did. We're the next in line.
Which,
as far as
we know what happened with the Roman Empire, and we know what's going to happen with the Phoenix, with America, the self-immolation is reflected by the Phoenix, and this is why to go off on yet another tangent, this is why it's so important to understand the Illuminati, because the phoenix representing, that's not the eagle, but the phoenix representing America, the self-immolating phoenix bird, and of course the rebirthing of the new Atlantis, and the writings of Plato, and understanding Plato's Republic, and understanding how that laid the foundation going forward to Antonio Gramsci, the Fabian Socialist, and moving on, and so. But again, tomorrow this is going to be just a terrific program that's going to have a lot of different aspects to it. Although the core is going to be homosexual, what's going on with the homosexual agenda. Although that's the core, we're going to be touching on virtually everything that we talked about. Because I was going to do like I said, I was going to do a 2-hour program on Sunday, and as I got into the notes as well, I'm thinking, wait a minute, this needs a lot more clarification, because people need to understand exactly how deep this reaches, and the other agendas involved here, which I mentioned some of them, but we're also talking about eugenics, population control, Agenda 21, Common Core. Yeah, it touches all of them. And even if you want to stretch it a little bit, the same players who are funding this, lobby-wise, are also funding the riots in Baltimore. Let's move on to those, because people are wondering, hey, when are you going to talk about that? Well, of course. What's going on there is on almost exactly. It was April 23rd, 2012. April 23rd. What is this? April 28th, right? 2015, 3 years ago, I wrote on HomelandSecurityUS.com, The Coming Chaos from the Obama-Soetoro Playbook. And I wrote this. I said, get ready, because of the riots, property destruction, chaos, and death seen in Athens and other European cities shown on television news is coming to America very soon. And I got people that took me to task that said, you're just you're promoting fear. You're a fearmonger. You got no basis to say this. If I may, with your permission, Joe, let me touch on a couple of things here, because I will repost this on Hagmann.com. But I wrote back then, America and the world today is in chaos. Wars, rumors of wars, high gasoline prices back then now. Increasing food prices still today. Growing divisions among races and between classes. Current and impending financial collapses dominate the headlines. Boy, nothing has changed except for the gasoline prices. Critics and detractors of Obama claim that it's a result of his failed policies, that our house and much of the world is in such disarray. Well, okay, and then I write investigation into the man known as Barack Hussein Obama II, the second, and the people behind him suggest otherwise. The purpose of this, or the dot connecting that I had done back then, and this is so important today, because you're going to hear people say, well, Obama's not doing anything with respect to the riots. What's Obama doing? He's issuing these little platitudes and statements. Folks, he's doing more behind the scenes than people realize. You do know, ladies and gentlemen, that the Obama regime sent 3 people from his administration, and I say that with contempt, to Baltimore, to the funeral of that young man that was killed while in police custody. Now, let me just make a disclaimer here. That man who was killed in police custody should have never happened, at least in my view, based on the facts that I know only. And I only know as much as you know. But you're not fine one moment and then you're being transported the next time. Joe, what is it? He was being transported and his spine was severed. His spine was severed.
Yeah, now there are reports that apparently he recently had some kind of spinal surgery. His name is Freddie Gray, had a pre-existing spinal and neck injury and severe damage and scar tissue from an accident that Allstate Insurance was paying a large structured settlement to him. He had several unsuccessful spinal fusion surgeries. Most recent was an operation a week and a half before his arrest.
Okay, well, let me tell you something. I know personally exactly what. I had a doctor tell me he hit the windshield again, and you expect paralysis or death, either one, and you'll wish for death while you might have paralysis. But having said that, we know that there's something very wrong. So, as a disclaimer, please, there is something very, very wrong with the police, the militarization of the police. That's not the subject here. That we'll address that separately. I don't agree with the militarization of the police, and neither does Joe. I don't want to speak for you, but I think we're pretty clear on that, right? Okay. All right. So, and folks, I know you, most of you anyway, and I'm not going to speak for you, but obviously we are all intelligent enough as we sit around this big kitchen table of ours and talking about important issues. We know that we should not have a paramilitary force on the streets. Now, there are exceptions to this. There are, unfortunately, necessary exceptions to this. It's interesting because Radley Balko, in his book about the militarization of police, writes or asks the question, is a police force constitutional? And if you think about that question, and if you think about the Founding Fathers and how, what positions police served back at the founding of our country, or really we didn't have any police back then. We had marshals and constables that served warrants, and policing was done within the community, and there was very little incarceration. It's a fascinating, the story about the development of the police forces is just a fascinating story. But getting back to the point, obviously there's a problem here. However, what we're seeing is a very deliberate, an extremely deliberate us versus them mentality. It's us, meaning you and me, against the police. A component of this is the war on drugs by Nixon, and we'll throw Elvis in there for good measure. Propaganda. The war on terror now, which is actually overcome, not on equal footing, but overcome the war on drugs, although they're running neck and neck. But you see, we cannot at this point fall into the trap, which we are being led right into a trap where we are being forced to go against the police. Now, I don't agree with what happened to Mr. Gray. I don't know what happened, but it doesn't take a Mensa person to know that something bad happened that shouldn't have happened.
And it's not just him. There's several, especially as of late, issues with police officers, and especially involving black youth or African Americans who've been shot in the back, and especially I think the one was in Cleveland or South Carolina, where a man was shot in the back running from police. They planted a taser on him. There are instances from Ferguson to,
all over the country.
And some of them are very messed up as far as police action, and some of them are I don't want to say justified, but sometimes officers don't have a choice. Like when the one officer is being assaulted and somebody's trying to grab for his gun. At that point, you have your life is on the line, and decisions have to be made. Now, we've gotten to a point where both sides have become so. The police are militarized, and we know that, as you said, there are plenty of great law enforcement officers out there.
That's right.
But there are just those few, just like there are a few rioters and the protesters who can make the whole mess burn down. It works both ways.
The old saying, you don't bring a knife to a gunfight, okay? I understand that we have to have a certain level of force. You have to meet a force with a certain level of force. The book, somebody asked me the name of the book by Radley Balko, it's called Rise of the Warrior Cop. I do recommend that for people who would like to read. But anyway, if we're looking at the situation, we have to ask ourselves, what's causing all of this? And we've got open borders. There's on both sides. There's absolutely no attempt to close the borders. You've got on both sides of the political aisle. You've got this CIA drug war, or the CIA drug operation that's taking place. Drugs are being input into inner cities by the CIA, and people might say, "Well, that's not true." Oh, yes, it is. Research bears it out, and even going back to the Church Committee back in the 70s. The police are at a disadvantage, but we're being led into a trap to go against the police departments, and it's easy to do, and and at times it's appropriate to do. However, the police that I know, and we all, I'm sure we most of us know good, honest, hardworking police officers who care about freedom, care about each one of us. They'll stop and help you change a tire in the rain. They'll make sure that they're the good old-fashioned police officers, but they're being replaced by these robo-cops, if you will. But that's another topic. But getting back to the article that I was referencing, if you look at the evolution of Obama from back even 3 years ago when I wrote this article, and you start connecting the dots, well, you've got this shadowy cabal of government leaders and their lackeys, their complicit media moguls, the eye candy mouthpieces, their ideologues intent on changing the United States and the world in bringing us into this level of chaos, which is exactly where we're being led to. And we're seeing it playing out in Baltimore. And ladies and gentlemen, let me just say this. Today, at 5:30, and when I was walking my dog, and even now as I'm talking, I can see, you will see this flash violence move from Baltimore west. You're going to see it move you're going to see it just encompass the entire United States. It may not be this summer, but it's going to be soon. Ethnos versus ethnos. It doesn't mean necessarily nation versus nation. It could mean black versus white. It could mean one race versus another. I shouldn't say black versus white, but that's the most evident here. Islam versus Christians. Islam versus Jews. Christians versus Jews. We're seeing a lot of that now. The confusion, the deliberate traps, the chaos, the deliberate chaos. If you don't think Obama is doing anything right now except playing golf and watching ESPN, you're wrong. He is really in the background stirring this up. Not just him, but the people around him. And that's why when I get so frustrated. When we had the opportunity, we collectively had the opportunity to say, or to ask the question, who is he? Is he eligible, constitutionally eligible? And you had these conservatives say, don't ask that question. You're distracting from you're distracting from the issues. BS. No, I'm sorry. That is the issue, because it's all about who Obama is. Obama is a product of the Tavistock Institute. His parents, the Tavistock Institute, his parents, the CIA. What do we have today? What happened to Kennedy? I say that only in reference to the CIA. All of this, the connections between Bush and the CIA. What we're seeing today is the culmination, we're seeing the fruits of the roots of the labor, or of the evil, as Steve would say. What we're seeing right now is the manifestation of these plans that have been very long in play. And no one, or very few, I shouldn't say no one, but very few people said, hey, wait a minute, stop. Look at the bigger picture. Look what's going on. Whether it's Roe v. Wade, or the war on drugs, or whatever.
How about this new issue? The moral dimensions of climate change and sustainable development.
Right.
Put out by the Pope.
But you see, here we go. Okay, and people, and like you chuckled. Okay, people will chuckle at that. It's unimportant.
I chuckle because it shows. I mean, I don't chuckle because it's funny. When you hear the Pope teaming up with the UN Sustainable Development Agenda 21, it just further shows the hierarchy at the top's level of control and the implementation. And not only do they call on the leaders, but they call on the whole, what they say, all the 1.2 billion Catholic warriors to get out there and fight against climate change skeptics.
See, and I can talk about this. I mean, I feel like I have the moral authority to talk about this, having gone to a minor seminary. I believe, as a Catholic,
baptized Catholic, confirmed
yes.
Catholic, went to Catholic school.
And when I told my father, I said I cannot, in good conscience, still be a Catholic, knowing what I know. My father didn't talk to me for a year. I've got a cousin who's a Roman Catholic priest. Not happy with me at all.
Well, see, it can't be like that. We can't have disagreements that lead to discommunications or. I mean, especially us as believers need to get to a point where we are unable to be offended by another person's words or beliefs.
Right. But see, what the Roman Catholic Church, and this is one thing that was pounded in my head in the seminary. It had nothing to do with the Bible. When I was in the seminary, the Bible was used as a historical book to talk about church history, not about... and the focus on when I was in the seminary was not about Scripture. It was not about the Bible. It was church history and church hierarchy.
And I don't know if this any people who still attend Catholic masses out there. If I've heard from two separate people now who've told me that they do no longer have any Bibles in the Catholic pews. They have a pamphlet for what teachings are going to go over for that week, and that's it. No more Bibles in the Catholic churches. So if you feel like
I think that's regional, Joe. I heard that too, and I spoke with an old classmate of mine. This was probably 2-3 weeks ago. Our reunion's coming up, which I won't even tell you how many years. But he said this. He said because I was talking to him about Bibles and about the studies and with the parishioners and they're moving away from using the actual, because the original question I asked him, what version of the Bible do you use for your parishioners? And he said, well, we have this amalgamation of works that we present in our parish. That he's a head of his parish. So anyway, that's getting off track. But I know we're up against a break. I can't believe how quickly this hour has gone, folks. I hope you don't think that I've wasted your time tonight, but tune in tomorrow because tomorrow's going to be such an important show. It's going to touch on everything that we talked about with the primary focus, the Supreme Court.
Yeah, we're going to start there.
Yeah, but touch on everything else. And we're going to bring Stan Deyo on. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, with that, we'll take our break now. Ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of this Tuesday edition of the Hagmann Hagmann Report. Today is April 28th, 2015, and as every Tuesday comes, so does Mr. Stan Deyo. His website is standeyo.com. We call him the real Indiana Jones. He is a great friend of the show and a blessing. And, Dad, I do have a note here from Stan. You need to set the DVR for channel 376 as Stan's interview is on now.
Okay, hang on a second. Wait a minute. 376.
Channel 376.
Okay.
And
let me go to the studio monitor here. Hang on.
We got it right down here. And sorry, right. Stan, I forgot to tell my dad, so we missed the first few minutes here. But
here's the studio monitor. It is now.
Let's see if we can see his. There it is, Prophecy Watchers.
Okay, stand by. And
there he is.
Oh my goodness,
Stan, we're seeing you live on TV.
Okay, I got to hit this button.
Oh, gee, that sounds good. I'll have to turn mine on and put it on record as well.
Okay.
I wish I looked that handy.
Okay.
There we go. Okay, actually, this has a feature. It goes.
Are you recording it now?
Yeah, it goes back to the beginning where it records. Wow.
And folks, that's anybody who has DirecTV. That's channel 376. You can watch Stan Deyo live right now, or prefer if you record it, listen to Stan live now and watch it later.
That's right. Wow.
Welcome back to the show, Stan. How was your week?
Oh, busy week already. The science side of things has been what I've been more interested in this week, I guess, than Watching what's happening over in Baltimore, that's depressing. I guess you guys have been covering that this morning or this afternoon.
Yeah, we touched on it a little bit. We did not. I mean, we touched on the root cause, the death of Mr. Gray and the mishandling by police, not just here in Baltimore, but in so many other cases around the country as of late. But there seems to be something completely different to this Baltimore violence, because the excuse that is used on TV is that a group or groups of high schoolers wanted to start a protest outside of a mall, and somehow this protest turned into violent riots. And at least for me in my research, there's a gap. There's something missing as to why this escalated the way it did. And there's a lot of, with the politicians locally and statewide, a lot of things, sound bites that were said. The mayor, for one, saying we're giving these people time to destroy, or their space to destroy, and then trying to walk that back and say she didn't say it or her words were twisted. What do you make of all this? Do you think this is spontaneous?
No, I think it was orchestrated. They've been bussing in people, I'm sure. When the usual talking heads get up there, from the left-wing side of things, and start, telling us how bad it is and how bad the police force is and all that kind of stuff, you can see that they're just trying to stir up trouble. And, you don't hear this kind of stuff if you have a white-on-white attack of any kind, or, it's treated fairly. You get the truth about it. But a black fellow, white-on-black attack, you don't get a true picture. You can just guarantee they're going to not tell you the truth, and they're going to fabricate things to make it look worse than it is. And it's not, in the main, it's not the community that it's happening in. It's people that are, activists that are bust in or drive in or whatever to participate in it and stir up the locals and tell them, you'll be on TV or whatever, you'll help the cause. But yeah, I mean, and that police chief there, that mayor, when she said that they couldn't return the force, apparently that came from the White House, and that's just crazy. I mean, if they'd had rubber bullets, they could have bruised a few of those guys and stopped it right then. But no, had to let it keep on going and destroy those businesses. I don't understand that, except it's part of an effort to bring about civil disobedience so that martial law can be inflicted on us.
I totally agree, Stan. And hi, by the way. Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Good evening.
Yeah, it's a sad thing, really. During the first hours, I was saying how heavy that my heart is tonight and has been all day, and over the last days, but especially with Baltimore, this is really, in my view, an extension of the orchestrated chaos that Obama and his people around him were put into position to really usher in. And I think that this is what we're seeing is just merely the end game. This is kind of like the last quarter of the game. Or even if you want to take it in a different analogy, this is the rioting after the game, where you see all the fans, if you will, overturning cars and igniting cars and looting and stuff. But we're in the end part of this, I believe. This is, to me, this is really just the flashbang of the fuse that was lit a long time ago.
Yeah, there's so many things that could be happening this year, and I think are going to happen to give us a lot of grief here in the United States, that this is only one of the thread curves that we're going to see. Certainly it's one that we can visualize very easily after watching the news events, but you've also got to consider things that might happen in the Middle East, forcing Russia to, and perhaps China, to attack the United States eventually, an EMP weapon, something like that. I'm holding my breath. I mean, we're seeing a lot of people that normally wouldn't come to our website, are seeking us out on Google because they want to figure out how to get ready when they lose power and the economy collapses and stuff like that. So by the number of increases that we're seeing, I know that people out there are starting to worry, and for good reason. What a dark year.
Yeah, and I think toward the tail end of last year, or even maybe mid-year last year, I think you had indicated through multiple conversations, that this year, as did others, that this year was going to be a tough year, a very pivotal year in terms of events, and I think we're seeing that play out. But we don't want to drag you down here, Stan. You had mentioned if you want to go elsewhere, we certainly can. It's up to you.
Well, hold on one second. Okay, sorry, I was just checking on another news story here. Okay, now, the good news type things. Well, I've got some things that I found interesting that are science things and CERN things. And the first one that I want to talk about is the servers, the computers that are analyzing the data that CERN is getting from the various tests they're doing. Because they're not only running one test to see if there are parallel dimensions or find the God particle, that's only one of a lot of experiments that they're planning to run on the CERN system. And I was looking today at their computing power to analyze all the data they get. And, when you figure that 600 million times a second particles collide inside the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, when you start analyzing the impact zone of that goes into lots of numbers, lots of zeros after a one, as to the amount of data that you've got to reconstruct in your computers. And their computer can't do it all by itself. They formed what's called the LHC computing grid, which is a community of other computers all around the planet, and they link 8,000 physicists around the planet into their server farm. Now, they got the main room of it, which is, I don't know what it is in square feet, but in meters, it's nearly 1,500 square meters, and you can see a picture of it there on our show images page. But when they distribute this kind of computing power, they're allowing more and more computers to come in parallel to that and hook up, and they can expand it. And they're talking, 45 petabytes of data storage on disks. And I'm wondering, this is like they've got 100,000 computer cores working, and at the moment they're going to expand it with another 20,000. Yeah, Holly said it's over 16,000 square feet. She just did the conversion for me.
Wow.
And there are 11,000 servers in there with those 100,000 processor cores. Now, what I see there with this concept of the distributed processing they're using is that we're looking at a computer system already in place that could handle much of the load for a world economic system, a digital money system. And I just wonder, since all the countries in the world that have joined are major players in the world economy, if this is something that they know about and they're going to be able to tie into for emergency digital money, a program they could throw onto the Hadron Collider's computer system. Anyway, just a thought came to mind. That much computing power just boggles the mind, and you can read about it and the details of it there by clicking on the text beneath there, and it'll take you to their website. Now, out of all the experiments they're doing, the one that you want to look at is the Atlas experiment, and I've got a link to that homepage and to descriptors of the experiment and a virtual tour you can take. These are all on the top row there, so you can see what they're looking for and how they're doing it, and what subsystems are used to get the information. So if you use what I had there last week as far as tracking their data and stuff like that, you'll understand more about it when you click on the things that are tied to the Atlas experiment. Anyway, that's kind of good.
So, okay, so just so I'm kind of on the same page here, multi-purpose, multi-use. I guess you're telling us to think a little bit bigger, think outside the box as to what the capabilities and potential use are. Uses are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just think a computer is a computer. All you got to do is put software in it, programs to do what you want. It's the processing power, and I've been wondering, is there another one, the Beast computer, that they've been talking about for years over Brussels, or is it this, or does this tie into that, and it's part of the distributed processing? I don't know, but when you see this kind of computing power, you have to kind of get somewhat excited about it. It's big.
Can that, and forgive my ignorance on this, but could this be easily hacked? I mean, I guess with something this huge, that might even sound like a ridiculous question, but could this be brought down? I mean, obviously.
Well, parts of it might be, but I think that whatever computer or computer network they're going to be using for the world economy has to be just about in place already now, so that it can be switched on quick enough to avoid anarchy across the planet when the world economy just collapses. But like with any system, if you've got access to it over phone lines or internet lines, it is possible that someone could hack in. However, I suspect the way they've designed this is that they can isolate the segments of it so that only a portion of it would be hacked. And the advantage to hacking would, I suppose, be to bring it down or something like that. But since I know for decades they've already been backing up, financial transactions with credit card companies and stuff that are already linked into the system, they've been backing up at the close of every business day. So the most data that they would lose if someone hacked in and brought it down, it would be probably a full 24-hour trade cycle, and they just bring it back up from the reserves, even local reserves on site in each of these segments. So I don't think that we'd be able to, bring it down if anybody wanted to, because, it's just going to be so integrated to everything and so backed up that it's the only thing I think that would take it down is an EMP pulse, something like that.
Well, you make a good point, though. It has, whatever this digital currency or this digital tracking, the mark of the beast, whatever you want to call it, or all the above, it's got to be operational now. And I think that's a great point, because when everything does take a tumble and dive, something has got to be right there, ready to go.
They won't be able to wait weeks and months and stuff like that, because the society has to have a method of exchanging goods and services, and so I know that it's there somewhere, and probably, as I say, distributed so that you might hit one node of it, but then they'll be back up and functioning, on another node or backup systems around the planet.
And it could be functional at a higher level, and the way I just see this coming into play would be, you've got this working on the nation-state level, the computerization, the financial computerization, and then of course it would trickle down into from nation-state into the populace, and of course, if you want your money back that you had in your bank account, you got to sign on. You have to become part of this digital currency, and becoming part of this is going to include this mark of the beast scenario. I guess it really doesn't. It's pretty clear to me. or some variation of it. But I mean that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it, I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
Yes, it's interesting times. Interesting times.
Yeah, and try to do business outside of the system, automatically you'll become a criminal, or you just won't get services or goods or services, or you won't be able to play. You won't be able to live.
Well, if you're hacking to steal money, let's say from somebody else or some company, and put it into your account, that's not going to be any value to a hacker, because the system will have a record of where the debits and credits went to that hacker's number. It won't be like you can cash it out into gold or silver and run around and trade with it, because gold and silver will probably be marked as illegal trading to the average person. Only nation states will be able to trade in those kind of things. So you'll be a criminal if you try to trade in old dollar bills or old euros or gold coins or silver bars. That you'll be accused of being some part of an illegal operation of some sort.
What Stan? What I found amazing is, even today, if you were trying to get a mortgage today, for example, and let's say you had $5,000 or $10,000 tucked in your mattress. You had it there for years, and you say, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to go put this money down on the house to buy a house, or my first house. You can't do that. You cannot do that. They will not accept that. Now they'll accept it if it's been in an account for a period of time, but they want the paper trail. You can't. And I never knew this, but and people have said no, that's not true. But try it. You can't use. It's now you can buy a house, we'll say, for cash, all cash, but you've got to. But if you want to use cash that you had stuffed in your mattress to put down on the house, they won't take that, because they don't know where it came from. So you're automatically, that's criminalization of cash.
Yeah, look, I know that you could still deposit cash at the moment, but
yes.
When the crunch hits, they may let you deposit it for a certain amount of time and say, okay, you can bring out all your mattress money. But even that, you'll probably get a reduced amount of dollar value or new credit value than what you thought, because they will have the ability to tell you, well, okay, that 5,000 old U.S. dollars is only worth 500 new dollars for the world, or digital dollars. Now that may not be a big deal, because they may adjust the pricing of a lot of goods and services down by 10 times as well. But I know the United States at the moment, with the weakening U.S. dollar, we're going to get hit hard for things after it happens, as far as all the goods and services that we buy that are imported. We don't have the backing to whatever the new currency is to get excited about. It's gone overseas to a number of other places in the form of gold, silver, and oil, and energy. Anyway, yeah.
Wow.
It's not going to be as easy as people thought. You're going to need the goods.
Yeah.
And even that, you see, you don't want to brag about, because they're going to make it illegal for you to hoard stuff, in times of, quote unquote, crisis. So people who are, preppers are going to be labeled as enemies of the state because they're hoarding. And so their goods are then going to be fair game. It's going to be a time when you don't want to be on the planet,
Yeah, perfectly.
I'm hoping the rapture comes way before that.
Wow. Well, Stan, I had a question. Somebody had sent me an email over the weekend, and it said, right on the subject line, please ask Stan this Tuesday or this week. This individual wants to know the extent of, since you brought this up, the extent of the powers, the government, and I don't recall where this individual is from. I know it's the United States, but I don't know which state. But is there technology? I know there's technology out there, but is there technology in use by the police departments, by DHS, by federal agencies that can the pinpoint. Let's say you've got a pantry, a hidden pantry in your house. I mean, I don't know, or a hidden stockpile of ammunition, or even a hidden stockpile of money. I mean, whatever. Is there technology in use right now that can see through into your house, or maybe from the air down into your house, that can identify a certain commodity of whatever it might be?
Hard question to answer. I do know that the sensors that they put in some of the like stealth helicopters and stuff can fly over your home and certainly count the number of living bodies in there from the infrared data. As far as metallic objects, things that are magnetic or can be sensitive to magnetic fields, they can certainly fly over and pick those. And I know that there are high altitude or relatively high altitude devices that mining companies use to map out gold deposits and things beneath the surface. So using something like that in a military or government operation, I don't think is hard to imagine. I just don't know how much infrastructure and equipment and money that takes, whether it's worth the effort. But I guess living in the cities, we're just going to be targets. I mean, that's it.
Yeah, precisely. We probably have more to worry about from our neighbors and our family members saying, "Hey, they're hoarding food, or they're hoarding bullets, or whatever."
Well, there's an incentive. I mean, they've done this in Nazi Germany. Even you can say, "Look, your neighbor's got a hoard. Okay, turn them in, and if we find they do have a hoard, we'll give you 10% of it as a reward." So, yeah, you get all that food, medicine, or whatever they're going to give you as a reward. It's a big incentive.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right.
Switching gears here, looking at your show images page on your website, and folks, you can go to standeyo.com, and on the right-hand side next to the microphone, click the show images button. You have an interesting graphic and story up here, unmasking the secrets of Mercury. And in this article, it talks about the Mercury atmosphere and surface composition spectrometer instrument aboard NASA's Messenger spacecraft was designed to study the surface and atmosphere of the planet Mercury. I see the pictures here. Are these the real colors, real photographs that you would see if we were sitting out in front of Mercury?
No, they're interpretations of the different frequencies that they're using to analyze the surface of Mercury. Like we were talking about, can they find gold, or silver or bullets or whatever flying over your house? Well, this in essence is what they're doing with equipment going around Mercury. And what you're seeing here is a part of several frequencies that they analyze the surface of Mercury with. And each frequency is assigned a primary color so that you can see that the blue area has more of certain type of emission than the yellow or the green or the red areas. It's quite a pretty picture, the rainbow effect it generates, but it's a way to map the surface for a number of properties. Reflectivities and stuff like that are fairly simple, but this one goes into more detail as far as minerals and depths of things. You can read the article. It's quite a beautiful concept, and it produces a beautiful image. But it does answer a question that we were addressing a while ago about what can be seen through the roof. I'm sure this kind of technology can be extrapolated to a helicopter.
Interesting. Okay. Wow.
Boy, we sit here in our house, and we're just across the highway from the south end of Fort Carson, and last night I think we had it happen about 3 times, but it happens frequently. You'll hear one of these kind of feathered stealth helicopters come right over your house, like that. And so now then, thinking, well, okay, they got the infrared on or whatever, I'll lean back in my chair in the living room and wave at the ceiling because I didn't want them to be disappointed and see nothing happening, when they're spying on us. It's bad.
Well, you certainly
anyway,
have. Take us wherever else you want to go. You certainly have. And folks, go to standeyo.com. That's Stan Deyo, DEYO.com. To the right of the microphone, click on the Show Images page, or you can go to our. If you're on our site, we have got a direct link to the Show Images page for tonight. But take us wherever you want to go. What excites you today? I mean, what do you find?
As I said, I'm on a kind of a technical rant today. That link I send you to there for our Show Images page, where you go to the Mercury pictures. If you go to the read story part of it, you'll see a lot of other interesting stories that you can read later that NASA puts up about various projects they're doing. To the right of that Show Images link, I have the story of the X-37B, which is a miniature version of the shuttle. It's unpiloted, but it's remote control. That has just come back down to ground, and they've been refurbishing it and are not telling anybody what it's really doing up there. It's secret. Lord only knows what they're testing up there, but they're going to send it back up in a few weeks with a new kind of ionized xenon gas thruster, which they want to put into satellites, which means that they can run the satellites for a lot longer on less energy. It's just part of a number of things that they're letting us know about. But this thruster they're using is what's called a Hall effect. And, again, if you click on the story part of it, it'll tell you, how many kilowatts that thruster will use and, how many pounds of thrust. It's not big, but it's enough to keep what they call station keeping for the satellite, to trim its orbit for deviations in gravitational field and solar storms and that kind of stuff, to keep it at a distance where they want it and on an orbit that they want. But you can read about it by clicking onto that, and it will give you a bit of a rundown, and there are links within that article to kind of more general descriptions about this X-37B craft and what it can do as far as what they want to tell us about. It's an interesting thing, but anyway, we know for sure that they do put things up in orbits that they don't tell you about. And if you ever do look at one of these NASA maps of the little red dots around the Earth that show tracked satellites, whether they're American or, that is so busy. I mean, thousands, right? Like at least 5,000 of them are there.
I do that when I use my telescope outside to when I see something moving in the sky, I bring up my computer. I have Stellarium, then I have the satellite tracker to make sure I'm not seeing a satellite or trying to rule out exactly what it is that's in the sky that I'm looking at.
Yeah, and he's got one of those. Joe's got one of those. Remember, Stan? Remember on Art Bell they used to advertise the
8-inch Deep Space Hunter.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the brand name of that though.
Celestron or Celestron?
No, it was Deep Space Hunter. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can't remember the name either.
Art Bell used to talk about them in a huge telescope. I mean, the size of a small refrigerator.
People think it's a hot water tank.
It's just it's anyway. Yeah. So he and the moon is like, my goodness, you could almost see the
dust particles.
Yeah, I mean,
what started all this was I was looking at all those red dots that Joe and I were talking about as far as positions of satellites that are orbiting around the planet, and we haven't heard about 5,000 launches of satellites or more. I mean, I don't know how many dots are really there. That's what they're showing. But when you think about it, that means that at least 5,000 rocket launches with satellites have been done by somebody to put them up there. And from our viewpoint, looking at that cloud of red dots orbiting the planet at various altitudes, it's like a minefield, you know. I mean, it's cluttered. There's a lot of junk up there. It's, you know, they're definitely doing things that are not being made public.
Are there? It's my understanding, Stan, that there are these. Some satellites can deliver. And please correct me or enhance what I'm asking. There are space-based lasers that are pretty doggone accurate that can be used to take out an aircraft, we'll say, or to paint and ultimately take out an object on the ground. Is that science fiction or is that true?
Well, yes, no. They can put an orbital laser up there that might be more like a maser, microwave laser, because they have to choose frequencies of light that are electromagnetic radiation that do not bend or distort in the Earth's magnetic field. One of the problems they had on the ground trying to use laser weapons on board ships and things is that if you're trying to track something, say, 5 or 6 miles out, that ambient conditions in the atmosphere and in the magnetic field will cause that beam to wander off target. So you had to have a way to deliver it to the target and not let it, be deviated by the magnetic field. Same problem in orbit. In fact, a bigger version of it. You can't overcome that with directed microwave beams. You can overcome it with a laser beam that, is strong enough to ionize the atmosphere straight to the target and then pulse toroidal rings of charged particles along that wire to the target. The big problem is that it does snake around a bit, and so you've got to get there, do the job very quickly before ambient conditions, take it off target. So yes, I mean, I'm sure that they've got stuff up there like that they want to use or may use in a time of war, like the James Bond movies.
Well, and that brings me to another question here that I promised somebody I'd ask you. This speaks to the Baltimore riots. It also goes to, the Baltimore uprising riots, but it also goes to previous discussions we've had on this show. There appear to be in use acoustic or sound weapons against protesters, against people, rioters. I guess the first thing that I'm supposed to ask you is, to what degree are these in use? Do you know? For example, the big. I'm sure you've seen them on the trucks. The big. They look like a bass drum, and they supposedly emit some sort of sound that creates nausea, for example, or disorients the people.
You can actually create sound. You can create the sound in the nervous system of the people you're aiming it at. I've seen this demonstrated on television years ago, where they would take a flat panel, and that panel would be this modulated sound, but it was sound that would only appear in a human brain when it was pointed at the brain. You wouldn't hear it otherwise. It wouldn't reflect off of surfaces, and you'd hear it like normal sound. And they had a guy stand on the stage. He was the guinea pig, and probably the host of the show, as I recall. But anyway, they took this flat panel, which was having music playing through it, and the guy couldn't hear anything. You couldn't hear anything in the studio, but as soon as they swept it past, pointed at his head, it gave him a blast of sound he couldn't believe, which led me to think about, the nefarious uses of such a thing, where you could say, take some very suggestible individual and say to him, this is the voice of God. Here's what you're supposed to do. And you create a Charlie Manson out of him, just by talking his brain, because he doesn't realize the voices can be produced by this type of technology. Extending that, then, as far as a sound-based weapon to control crowds, you can make it so painful that it paralyzes the people for a short period of time when they get hit with a beam like that.
Huh. All right.
It doesn't break down the neighbors or anything else. It's a directed neural sound wave. It can overheat you a bit, but that's about it.
Well, yeah, I can imagine, and that goes to. I mean, we could take that in so many directions. The deception, the upcoming deception, the alien deception. I mean, we can go look back in history. The shooter, the naval yard shooter, hearing voices. Was such a weapon perhaps used against that person to direct his rampage? What? I mean, there's so much to. I don't know.
It's just a modern version. It's a modern version of the Manchurian Candidate type technology.
How do you fight that? Is there any? I mean, I'm serious. You put tinfoil on your head. I mean, are we really to that point, or what?
Well, I suppose you could shield it that way. You probably want to be in a total metal box, or like a metal suit, like a knight's suit or something. But if I understand it correctly, if it hits your nervous system anywhere, it'll transmit along there. But like any weapon, there's probably a way around it that is even simpler than that. Maybe a way to reflect it back, reflective mirror for that frequency range that you just use a mirrored shield, and like Captain America, you point it in the direction of the incoming, and you're shielded.
Well, it almost seems like we're not, in the final thrust of the war, the earthly war in which we're going to be engaged. There are going to be weapons that are so powerful, so overpowering that I'm not sure. We're going to be able to fight off what they've got or what they will use against us. I mean, it's.
That's why we don't want to be here.
Right. I hear you. Okay.
Back to some technical spacecraft news. There is reports that a launch to the International Space Station is now out of orbit or missed its mark. Russian spacecraft spinning out of control in orbit with salvage bid underway. The Russian space agency Roscosmos is scrambling to regain control of robotic Progress 59 cargo ship that appears to have suffered a serious malfunction shortly after launching into orbit early today. This is the spacecraft that is bringing supplies to the International Space Station. In this article, they go on to say that there was a malfunction with the data. They weren't able to get it properly lined up, and it has now the potential to spin out of control, and they will possibly lose control of this. If this were to lose control, to your knowledge, is there any danger of this falling back to Earth, or is this something that will spin out into space?
Oh, I think its orbit will degrade. It'll come down to the surface eventually. They might be able to destruct it, but they would want to do that way down in the atmosphere, because if you blow up something like that while it's in high orbit, or even though it's quasi-orbit, you put out a bunch of flak or shrapnel that can interfere with a lot of other satellites over a period of time. They try to be very careful about what they leave up there in orbit for that very reason, because it's just a minefield. If you hit those things, say your satellite, whatever it is going around the Earth in a clockwise direction, it'll be doing it at around 17,000 miles an hour, give or take a bit. And if it were to run into one of these pieces of debris going in the opposite direction, in a contrary orbit, it might hit it at a relative speed of 34,000 miles an hour, and it'll destroy the satellite and the junk that it hit. So it's varying degrees of impact. If the craft that they're losing control of or have lost control of were to be blasted apart, then its pieces would probably be going in a clockwise orbit. Most of them seem to do that for whatever reasons they're using it for. And that would mean that it would be at a much slower relative speed should it impact other satellites in the heavens up there in orbit around us, down in the order of hundreds or maybe a few thousand miles per hour different speed. So it might be something that a satellite could endure and still function were it hit by a piece of that debris. So best of all, if they could get it to descend, if they could get it to rapidly head down to the atmosphere, especially over, say, an ocean area, then it would burn up, and the pieces that survived would go into the ocean and not be a great drama unless there's something we don't know about that would pollute the ocean.
And they also have...
It's a problem.
They have a backup system called the Telerobotically Operated Rendezvous Unit, which allows the cosmonauts on the station to take manual remote control in the event of a system failure. So it's not a lost cause yet, from what the report says.
No, I don't think it is yet, and certainly they're going to be doing their best on the space station to get it in, because it's a supply module, food and coffee and good stuff.
Yeah. We have a...
Can I break in here?
Sure.
This is a rather interesting question, Stan, and I'm not even sure we've ever addressed this with you. This is a listener from New Zealand wanting to know why did the United States stop the space shuttle system or space shuttle program? I'm not even sure you and I ever talked about this, or we ever spoke about this, did we?
No, I don't guess we did, and I'm not sure I know the answer to that. One of the things that I heard, which was public knowledge, was that the technology was getting so old that it wasn't reliable to keep on, keeping the shuttle program functioning with all the old technology. They certainly haven't gone about making new technology, though, have they, that we know about to replace the shuttle program. So, although that story may be true, it kind of bespeaks that they're trying to use an alternate method of doing whatever they're doing rather than telling us about it.
Okay. Yeah, I when I saw that question pop up, I thought, I'm not even sure. It just kind of bam, we just stopped doing it. And okay, well, that's interesting.
A question from a listener, Doreen, wants to know if you have any information about possible volcano eruptions, steam plumes being observed in Nevada, and if this is something that we see an uptick of volcanic activity here in the United States.
What she's seen the steam plumes coming up in Nevada? Is that what she's saying?
She provided a link to a man named Dutch Sense, and it's titled "Volcanoes in Nevada Erupt Steam Plumes. Weather Service Observing the Event." And I'll send you this link in the Skype. It talks about from Cold Springs to Middlegate, Nevada, steam plumes from a volcanic field near Cold Springs, Nevada, where plumes of large enough to be seen from the sky are being seen. And I'll throw this here in your Skype now. And we've been getting a lot of questions about volcanic activity from Yellowstone to and this is kind of separate, the island Catalina. They're talking about its possible sinking and the cause of a tsunami that would happen after that event, if that did happen. Kind of like what you're talking about, the expanding and the contracting of Earth. It seems like the Earth is continually moving, and as these things happen, from the earthquake we saw just yesterday to things like this with Nevada and Yellowstone, Old Faithful not blowing as much with the geysers as it used to. There seems to be some kind of geological changes inside the Earth and on the outside of the Earth.
Yeah, I think so. Certainly the volcanic activity is increasing. Holly and I have looked at that, and it's definitely on an uptick. No question about it. And Dutch Sense, his analysis of these things is really quite good. I visit his stuff quite frequently. There are a number of volcanoes that are technically dormant, not extinct, that have been active in the last 24 months, I suppose now, that are quite serious. This earthquake over in Nepal is another serious sign of things happening. I mean, when you move a mountain range like that 10 feet closer to China all of a sudden and kill 4,000, 5,000 people, this is no small event. So both earthquakes and volcanoes, which do tend to increase, at the same time, are on the increase. So I wouldn't be a good time, I don't think, to move to Yellowstone just because of that. And certainly living on the coastal areas of the United States or the West Coast and the New Madrid area, probably not clever because of these increasing stresses on the surface. The Bible does tell you that in the last days of this age, we're going to see increased earthquakes in various places, diverse places. But we're seeing that, and we're seeing an increase of it where people live, which is an important thing because earthquakes out at sea or that don't produce big tsunamis or whatever, and earthquakes in remote areas that don't really damage world economy or populations aren't too important. So it's talking about ones where people dwell and ones where it will affect the world economy. Those earthquakes in diverse places, like all over the place, increasing, are a sign of the end of this age.
Man. Okay. I just happened to just check your show images page. I'm sorry. Blood falls in Antarctica. I didn't see this.
That was astounding. It's a river of looks like blood that's frozen coming out of the ice in the Antarctic. And what it is living material, but it's bacteria apparently that's multiplied in the brine seas back up into the ice back there. You can see little rivers of it, which look like kind of brownish lines running down the ice pack. And they say that the brine sea that was entrapped there in that ice was twice as salty as normal seawater, and that these bacteria flourished in that. And if you think about it, the red tide effect that we've seen in the lakes in northeast Africa, turns the water to blood-looking because of various algal blooms. Well, they don't say these are algae; they say these are bacteria, which are living matter producing this blood color. But it's nasty looking, isn't it? That's the best I can say about it. And you can read about it by going to the link there. Gives you more of a detailed explanation of it. But yeah, it's called the Blood Falls. There's even a tent there where one of the researchers camps right next to it to see what it's all about. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that, but it is on the show images page today.
Definitely, it caught my eye when I saw that, and the first thing I thought of was some sort of a mass whale slaughter. But then, now that you mentioned the bacteria, the
algal blooms,
there you go. Yeah.
Well, Moses turned the water. Had put his stick in there. He had Aaron do it to turn the waters in Egypt to blood. Well, this may have been a function of temperature and the algal blooms that hit all the water there in Egypt, because we do see whole like lakes of blood color substance that stinks because it's living material when it dies. That however God had Moses do it, it does seem that God uses natural phenomena on the planet as part of his judgment in large quantities, of course, but we might be looking at a similar type event that was happening down there to the Antarctic because of the salinity and because of the conditions at the time when these bacteria were multiplying.
Okay. Understood. Have a listener actually from Singapore. Interesting. Hello, Singapore, by the way. Wanting your take on the recent earthquake in the context of CERN. Any relationship, potential relationship. We're talking about the earthquake that happened this past weekend that they're still, counting the dead from in Nepal. Anything there or anything abnormal on your radar with respect to the most recent earthquake? Realizing, of course, you touched on that earlier, but anything on your radar with respect to the location?
No, I don't know. It's not saying it didn't have an effect, but it's hard to know without being able to look at the numbers really involved in the magnetic field coils for the CERN device, when they're using it, and subsequent events after that. I really think we're seeing an increase in the earthquakes and volcanoes due to geophysical factors rather than to mankind and the CERN. People just don't realize how much energy it takes to trigger some of these events that we're talking about. It's a lot of energy in the magnetic field around the coils at CERN. I grant you that, and it could put a little bit of a wobble in the magnetic field, near the surface. But remember that the strength of a magnetic field decreases on the square of the distance, so that at 1 mile away from it, it'll be one value. At 2 miles, it'll be 1/4 that value, and so forth, on the square. And so it rapidly diminishes its effect. So the magnetic field of the Earth is deep down in, and we're only seeing the top part of it here, up on the surface. So,
okay.
I can't rule it out completely, but I just say that it's probably not what caused the earthquake there.
All right. Oh, it's interesting we have so many people with so many different questions. This one, it seems, references an oldie, but remains a goodie, shall we say. Please ask Stan, with all the talk of potential domestic terrorism here in the United States, this listener wants to know your take on, your expertise about. You'll recall suitcase nukes inside the United States, especially during the Cold War, being brought over, pre-positioned. Would they still be? Let's just say that there were suitcase nuclear devices or small nuclear devices smuggled into the United States during the Cold War, and I don't know really much about this, Stan, so you're going to have to kind of walk me through this. Would they still be viable? I mean, do they lose power? Do they lose efficiency? Do they have to be maintained? Are they still something to worry about in terms of a nuclear device, terroristic nuclear device?
Well, whether the ones that we're talking about during the Cold War are even still functional or not is not really the main concern I have, because I know that the Russians, Chinese, Israelis, us, we have tactical nuclear devices, weapons that a man could carry on his back. And with our borders being so porous, the placement could be done real time right now. And just walk on across to the city you're going to be at and blow the bomb. I'd worry more about those and the illegal immigration that can carry that stuff in than I would about the old, rusty ones that the Russians had. There are a few of them around, apparently, but there are many more, much worse, that are real time and new that we need to worry about.
Okay. Well, hopefully that answers that question. And that's an interesting question, because we hear all of these stories, all of these accounts, about these suitcase nuclear devices or tactical nuclear devices. But I think you redirected the concern appropriately.
I'd be more concerned about one single EMP burst at about 200 or maybe 100 to 200 miles altitude over the center of the United States, wiping out most of the public electronics, the phones, the computers, the power distribution. With that gone, who needs to bomb the cities? We'll take care of ourselves in the rioting that takes place after that.
That's true. I get an email from, I belong to a number of organizations that send out emails with respect to intelligence. And I get an email about, I guess, General Alexander, NSA veteran chief, fears crippling cyber attack on Western energy infrastructure. This came to me. And of course, this appeared in the Telegraph, and there was a note with this saying it's interesting the U.S. media is incapable of covering this type of information. And the subtitle or the subtext of this article is, the West lacks a shield against formidable foes and is losing the battle against terrorism as a chaos spreads across the Middle East. And, yeah, EMP-type blast here in the United States could take us out. And with all the movement of critical equipment back into the secure mountain, Cheyenne Mountain, I mean, is this what we're facing right now? Is this the greatest threat?
Well, there might be another threat with a meteor strike. We know that that's in the prophecies there in the Book of Revelation. There have been a couple of reports of, from that guy down in Puerto Rico saying that there's a large meteor going to hit this year near Puerto Rico, and that it will damage or destroy a lot of South American countries. And of course, we'll get the flak from it here, the fallout from it here in the United States as well. I forget the fellow's name, but I did watch his video, and he seemed to be quite earnest. And other Christian folk here in the United States have been talking about tsunamis along the east coast of America, and that could possibly be a result of that meteor impact. We do know, if you believe prophecy, it will happen at least once, maybe twice during the tribulation period. That bothers me. The sun itself bothers me because it's just, I want to say percolating, but with force. It's throwing off flares. It's throwing off mass ejections, coronal mass ejections, so regularly that it's kind of just commonplace to go up there and look at the last 2 days on Soho and just see flames shooting out in all directions from it. It's just very busy. And even though it may not have a lot of sunspot numbers, which is how we normally rate sunspot cycles, it has a lot of activity that is quite worrying to me anyway, that we're going to see some, very exotic changes in the surface of the sun. And we're going to feel it here in the form of heat and other effects, in the ultraviolet as well. So that's an issue. We still don't know what's happening with Israel and Iran, and with the United States being kind of hamstrung by the White House, our military being hamstrung, even though we've got military vessels, sea vessels over in the area there of the Straits of Hormuz and over in the Gulf of Aden. I doubt that we'll be able to use them like we should in those events. I mean, the Iranians fired across the bow of a ship that was coming in through the straits here today. And so what did the American fleet do? They just sat there. They couldn't do anything because they're hamstrung.
Yeah. That's
that Iranian ship should be at the bottom. I mean, I don't know.
It's an unfolding situation that seems delicate, especially with the ongoing negotiations with the administration in Iran and the government there and what they're doing with their weapons treaties and such. But
incredible. Times like these, Stan. Jeez. I don't know.
I know.
Anything you want to cover, Stan, that we haven't talked about? Because I see we've made it a little bit past the hour.
My goodness.
Yeah, I think we've done it again. We're over an hour. No, I think we're good. I suppose we might tell your listeners that I will be vacationing as Tom Horn takes the show next week, or my slot next week. Isn't that the way I understand it?
Yeah, that came up. He wanted to talk about my program sheet. I don't even have my program sheet here. Anyway, that was the day. So yeah, that was the day that he had because of his travels. So enjoy your time. Enjoy your week off. And
well, it just gives me 2 weeks to develop a lot of stuff to scare you with.
Love it. I I love it. Oh, and I got to tell you
Yeah.
this, Stan. One of these times, we got a couple of listeners who said that you've got to have Stan just talk, even if it's for the entire hour. Just talk about, blowing up, garages with the homemade chemistry set or the home chemistry set and stuff. So much.
Yeah.
So fun.
Yeah. I suppose we can do that kind of nonsense too. It's certainly not focusing on the dire situation around us. It takes your mind off of it. I do remember my dad and my grandfather. They went through the Great Depression, and Dad would tell me from time to time about how he and his dad, Grandpa Deyo, was supposed to be working, to earn whatever money they could get to feed the family during the Depression, and sometimes Grandpa Deyo would sneak out to a movie during the day just to take his mind off of it, go to a movie theater. And the reason my dad knew that was because Dad skipped school one day and went to see a movie himself, and he found his dad there, and so they made a mutual pact not to tell Grandma, or there would be trouble to pay, and so they proceeded from that point forward to keep that secret. But it tells you that in the direst of times, we need to have laughter. We need to have things that entertain us in a light way to take our minds off of what's around us, and we certainly need to have that incorporated in what we talk about.
We do. It provides us balance. It keeps us leveled a little bit, and I think that even in the direst of times, smell the flowers, pet the puppies, and just I get it.
How is your new puppy doing? I saw the nice picture you sent us of her trying to steal cookies.
Yeah, surprised her standing on the other side of the counter when she knew she did wrong. She put her paws up on the counter to sniff where some delectables were, and of course snapped a photograph. I was waiting for her to do that, snapped a photograph, and she's doing well, thank you. And your four-legged little ones?
Our four-legged little ones have been busy here. They drafted a note to your little lady. Jaysbo was quite excited to see the picture and had a few things to say. And they've actually sent this letter in a little parcel to your place today. And
oh my
you
goodness!
Should see it. Oh yeah, you should see it by the weekend.
Wow, we're going to have a pen pal situation going here. Perhaps something more. My goodness, I can't wait.
Yeah.
Well,
you gotta laugh. Gotta have fun.
Indeed. Well, God bless you and God bless Holly. You both are national treasures, let me tell you, and we certainly appreciate your time, and our listeners appreciate your time. They look forward to Tuesdays, and they look forward to having you on. And anytime, Stan, especially if there is, if we get hit with an EMP, promise me this: if we get hit with an EMP and all the electricity goes out, that you'll talk to us, even though we're going to be talking in the dark. You'll be talking to us on our show. Just promise me that. Never mind.
Well,
it didn't quite.
It can.
It didn't quite.
Remember it's the Shortwave Club here. We're members of that, and so I know how to get a hold of guys in the neighborhood that's got the big rigs, and maybe we'll still have some sort of shortwave radio shows. Who knows?
Yeah, that's what we're pushing for. I mean, we're trying to harden up ourselves here, and that's that's something that we really need to think about, Stan. I believe that we really need to prepare for, and that's the eventuality of either some sort of censorship via the internet or on the internet against the internet, or some other calamity that'll take us off the air. So we need to. It
all depends on who will be able to listen too. I mean, what will they have working equipment? You see, without an EMP damaged circuit or something like that.
Yeah. It's wow. Yeah.
I don't think if that happens, I don't think we'll be worrying about doing a weekly show. Let's face it. I think we'll be worrying about surviving. And on that note, I'm going to make a note to get extra aluminum foil for my tin foil hat.
Make sure it's that. Make sure it's a real heavy stuff, buddy. But anyway.
Oh yeah, that very thick aluminum foil.
That's right.
All right, guys.
Thanks, buddy.
I'll talk to you in a couple
care.
of weeks.
God bless you, Stan. Have a great week. That was Stan Deyo. Take care. That was Stan Deyo from standeyo.com. He is an author, a speaker, and you can now watch him on TV. Again, he was on channel 376 on Prophecy Watchers.
376? I thought
Gary Stearman.
Wait a minute. Wait.
No, I got it written down here.
You sure?
Yep, I'm sure.
Yes, you're right. Okay, 376. Okay.
What station is that?
That is CTN. I don't know. What is that?
CTN 376.
Oh, wait a minute. That was...
Yeah, but he was on, and then after that, it looked like Tom Horn and Chris Putnam were on an interview after that. So definitely check that out if you get a chance. As Stan Deyo was being interviewed on one of the several interviews he did.
And I got a couple of questions here about what picture you're talking about. If you want to see the picture of my of our studio dog stealing or trying to steal a cookie and getting caught at it, it's on my personal Facebook page. I didn't put it on the show for Facebook page, but it's on my personal Facebook page. To answer your question, Cindy and...
Yeah, you guys check that out. It's a great picture. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after these short messages.
To hour number 3, the final hour of the Hagmann Hagmann Report. On this, the 28th day of April 2015, I want to remind all the guys out there, well, everybody out there, folks, don't forget ProFlowers. They're offering our radio listeners of the Hagmann Hagmann Report 100 balloons with a free glass vase for just $19.99. They're offering that. This offer expires Friday. I got to tell you, what a fantastic special. That's ProFlowers, folks. Be proactive. Get that special person in your life, whether it's your mother, your wife, your sister, or whoever it might be. ProFlowers, right now, here's the only way to get 100 blooms with a free glass vase for just $19.99. You could either call 800-PRO-FLOWERS and use the coupon code Hagmann, Hagmann, or go to our website and click on the ProFlowers icon and then click on the blue microphone box, or go to proflowers.com and click on the microphone box there, type in Hagmann, and there you will receive your this special. And folks, with all the heavy stuff going on today, and I know you get down and man, I'll tell you what, you don't need a reason. You don't need an anniversary. You don't need Mother's Day. You don't need a birthday. All you need is just the desire to see the smile on the face of someone you love. That's ProFlowers. Really appreciate them being a sponsor of our show. ProFlowers.com, and use the coupon code Hagmann. Special for 100 blooms right now through Friday. Fantastic company, fantastic deal. Anyway, a lot of news, a lot of things going on, and Stan touched on that Iranian situation, the geopolitical aspects of that, the Iranian situation where the vessel over there, 34 reportedly. I think
Iran seized a ship under U.S. protection. An Iran patrol vessel fired upon and boarded a U.S. protected cargo ship as it sailed through the Strait of Hormuz, the Pentagon confirmed Tuesday. The Mazurk Tigris, a Marshall Islands flagged vessel, was going through the strait when it was contacted by about six Iranian patrol vessels and was ordered to further enter Iranian waters. It is not clear if the Tigris had inadvertently entered Iranian waters and then was approached. When the shipmaster of the Tigris refused, the patrol vessel sent warning shots across its bow, the Pentagon spokesman Colonel Steve Warren stated. And it goes from there.
Can we say that this is Baltimore on the high seas, perhaps?
I don't know. This seems a little bit more civilized.
Well, just so people know, the Farragut responded, as you pointed out. The USS Farragut responded to the distress call, and at least 5 Iranian ships have supposedly intercepted the vessel. Now, there's some questions I've got. There's reports where there's no U.S. citizens on board. And don't forget, as we look at international shipping, there are things called flags of convenience. Okay, so you might have a there are very few American flag cargo ships at sea. Most ships at sea fly what they call flags of convenience. For example, Panamanian or Liberian flags. So keep that in mind. There was a report that said this particular cargo ship was flagged by the Marshall Islands. Now, obviously, this is an act of war, and this is not a good situation. For all I'm not sure what to make of this. Okay, except to say, and I'm not trying to just waste time here in talking about this. I'm really having an issue with this. Obviously,
let me give you some background as to the maritime rules in this area. From what I'm reading here, the Pentagon says that all vessels going through this portion of the Strait of Hormuz do so under the practice of innocent passage with Iran. And it's an agreement that allows international commercial shipping traffic to move goods through those waters safely, as long as it is not prejudicial to good order, peace, security of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Okay, but let's. We're accepting the official story here, the official account, as being true, and it's unfortunate today. We have to ask ourselves: number one, did this happen? And first of all, did it happen? And did it happen the way they said it happened? Or is this a pretext for perhaps conflict or war with Iran?
And in all reality, nothing could have happened except the story is manufactured and
exactly
put in front of our faces.
Right, and I'm not. In no way am I suggesting that this was. This is all a hallucination. I'm not suggesting that at all. There have been so many conflicting reports for example, as of 11:54 this morning, a U.S. official had told Reuters news service that there was no indication any U.S. ship is being directed or intercepted by Iranian forces. Now, there's so much misinformation out there, but where did where did that come from, and why? Others have said the ship was carrying the Marshall Island flag, and of course we have a defense agreement with the Marshall Islands. Okay, and then it came out where this ship originated, or the last port of call was Jeddah, and this in fact might have something to do with the Saudi influence or the Saudi proxy war that's taking place with Iran. There's nothing, that's to me that should be out of off the table when we're discussing this. Could we be witnessing a new Gulf of Tonkin incident in some twisted way?
Possibly.
And some people might say, well, this actually happened. The Tonkin incident didn't. Well, wait a minute.
That's actually historical fact. It did happen.
Well,
not the way that history books portray it either.
Right. And
I think that's been released through declassified government documents.
Oh yeah. I, no doubt about it. But see, and here we are. We're struggling. Can you tell that we're struggling? And this is not a struggling because we are incompetent. I'd like to think that we're very competent. We're struggling because we have to me. We've got to take a look at all of the different angles of this, because if we look at just one and accept one, well, it might be the wrong one. But we can say for certain, if this is a ship, a flag for the Marshall Islands, it's effectively a U.S. flagship due to the Compact of Free Association, in which defense matters of the Marshall Islands are, in fact, administered by the United States. So the U.S. will absolutely positively have a responsibility for recovering the ship and the crew from the Iranians if, in fact, this is as it appears to be or is being presented. So, there you have it. Well, let's just say that and see now what would happen if we had this has the potential to affect the U.S. dollar insofar as you've got how can the U.S. assure safe passage of maritime traffic, in particular energy. I'm not saying this is this case here, but once that happens, once we can no longer assure safe passage of oil and energy, then what happens to the U.S. dollar? The petrodollar, it's gone, basically. So
Correct.
Could this very well be, I mean, this has the potential to impact the economy in that fashion. But how many people are thinking of it in that way? They're just looking at this as a geopolitical conflict. And then you've got the Saudi factor, that if the last port of call was Jeddah, well, what's going on there? Okay, so what was the ship carrying? Are there any, for sure, U.S. Passengers, crew members, whatever? Okay, this is pretty deep. So we really have to, we're keeping our eyes on this. That's for sure.
One more piece of news and then we'll take calls. Obama warns of anti-globalization sentiment in both parties. President Barack Obama said the rising anti-globalization sentiment in factions of both parties, political parties, risks a withdrawal by the U.S. from global economic competition and systematic growth. Obama, speaking Monday in an interview with Wall Street Journal, cited opposition to free trade deals by some Democrats and attempts by Republicans to cut the Export-Import Bank as evidence. There has been a confluence of anti-global engagement from both elements of the right and elements of the left, and I think they are a big mistake, Obama said. Obama spoke on the eve of Japanese Prime Minister Abe's visit to the White House, where the leaders of the two countries plan to talk about the remaining differences of their Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement negotiations. Now, we started the show talking about the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreements, and we're going to talk about this more in depth tomorrow. But one thing I find interesting here is, Obama's talking, Obama warns of anti-globalization sentiment. Technically, since the sovereignty has been taken away, I guess we are just a big globalized society. But if you want to, for him being a constitutional lawyer, they're pushing obviously towards a one world globalized system, one world economy, one world religious system, one world political system.
Right, exactly.
But there is no building up of this nation, because this nation has served its purpose and is now moving towards the international movements. This is why we see Bush 1, Bush 2, Clinton, Obama, and those are just the presidents that I remember, talked about, a move towards internationalization, towards globalization.
And this brings us to the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the Free Trade Agreement, that originally, folks, began with Brunei, Chile, New Zealand, and Singapore back in 2005.
It's called the NAFTA of the Pacific, or NAFTA on steroids. It would regulate things that range from food safety, fracking, financial markets, medical prices, copyright rules, and internet freedom. The treaty is only said to have 29 chapters. That was from 2013 in November.
This has been around since a long time. But
and
go ahead. It
goes on to say that one thing that struck me from here is the bypassing of Congress to do this. Obama is looking to do this outside of Congress, and the sovereignty of America would be given away. And what would happen is that the laws under this TPP agreement, it would essentially surrender American laws and give the authority to international tribunals. They also say that the treaty negotiations are being conducted in secret. So, this, in the other article you printed out for me, talks about this as well.
These are dated articles, okay? These are a couple of years old now.
Yeah, one's from 2012 in November, one's from November 2013, but they both do state that under this agreement, America would be giving up their laws to the authority of international bodies, where American business owners would be impacted adversely. Anything from access to the internet to exports, and this would not only be a job killer like NAFTA, it would annex the way that we do things. It would change and strip America of its sovereignty and rules. And the treaty allegedly would impose strict internet copyright rules that would ban any laws pertaining to buying American goods. I mean, what are we thinking we're getting into here?
Well, right, and we're seeing more and more. And the reason that I printed those out back from 12 and 13 is because this is coming to the forefront again, and we're seeing this what I would term Obama's push for this globalization. And, you know, built into this, and I mentioned during the first hour how the Supreme Court played this push for homosexual legitimacy of homosexual unions and marriage. Okay, now part and parcel to that, there is an international component. Obviously, this initiative to legalize this kind of a behavior began in Europe, or well, I shouldn't say the initiative did, but well, it did, as well as the legalization process, and now it's coming to the United States. But when you look at things like the globalist trade, built into that, into the human rights part of it, includes the special rights for homosexual marriage. And it's really a twisted thing. And there are a lot of people, and even when I look at it, I'm thinking, well, how does this relate? We've got Christians being beheaded overseas. We've got, I mean, the war is such we're fighting an asymmetrical war as Christians, and as really as lovers, or not lovers, but proponents of our constitutional republic, and people who desire freedom for everyone. Okay, but we're well, when I say fighting, we're defending in this asymmetrical war. Yet you've got Obama that is exporting not only our trade, but things like homosexuality as well as abortion. So this is all tied together. I probably didn't do a very well in explaining that, but all of this is all tied together. And you know, the deeper you go, the money that's behind this, whether it's the TPP or whatever it might be, the North American Union even, which is coming back, and the internet censorship, which is coming back, the SOPA, PIPA, ACTA, in different forms, being reformulated and being pushed through by a very intent Obama renegade-in-chief person and regime. Folks, we're in trouble right now, and I'm not sure if we can stop this freight train, multiple freight trains that are coming at us, and it's really crazy. So I just want to mention this too. Lou Dobbs, if you think about his career, when he got in trouble, or when he was put on the hot seat, is when he started asking questions about the free trade and the North American Union. So go back and think about that, and notice how most of the people today, the people behind the microphone, are refusing to touch these issues. Why? Well, two words: Lou Dobbs. One name: Lou Dobbs. Okay, not that he suffered immensely for it. I mean, he rebounded, but nonetheless, he certainly paid a price for it, and so did Ross Perot in his own way. And
all right, let's go to the phones. We're going to go to area code 717 first. 717, you're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report.
Good evening, Joe and Doug. How you doing?
Hey, very well. What's up?
off subject, but I need to thank both of you gentlemen for the quality of your show over the past several months, especially guests like Pastor Langford and others of that genre. They've been very comforting. I lost my wife last week to cancer.
Oh, my.
I know we had talked about it once before. And I know that Pastor Langford and, I've been sending out tons of emails, and I just wanted to, it's Langford and Steve Quayle, because I've been emailing Steve and others. If they're listening, thank you very much for your prayers. We got a lot of blessings during the last couple of weeks of her life. I think I had mentioned to you about Nancy Missler's articles on Dark Night and surrendering to our Lord, total surrender to His will. It really does make your life easier when you do that. The comfort and the love that you get from the Lord is just unbelievable. We had been praying and trying to walk closer with God for months. We were at the Bible Prophecy Conference, and that was a pretty remarkable event. I felt a lot of good things there. But,
we met you and your wife, right? I mean, Joe and I met you and your wife. Did we not?
Well, not Joe, but you did. Maybe Joe was standing there at the end, but, at the table.
Right.
And, we were very private about it. Didn't contact our friends. My wife had really good health up until about the last 2 months when this cancer really got evil and took over. And we had been praying hard. I'd pray on the way to work, pray on the way back from work. I'd pray in the shower. I'd get on my knees in the morning before I'd go to work, at night after coming home and giving her a back rub and reading Bible verses or some of Nancy's stuff to her. And we were praying for healing, but we were also, looking at it from the point of surrender where you're not worried about yourself anymore. We've moved beyond the self-centeredness of what we wanted, which was a healing, and we were just praying to God for help, and whatever His will would be His will. Well, He took her. And that's a whole other story, and it's probably a blessing that He did for her sake. She suffered a lot after being in Iraq in 2003. But, we prayed for help, and we never reached out to anybody. And about 3 weeks before, and I was struggling. I was working full-time, trying to take care of the house, 4 pets, get the garden ready for the spring, all that, and trying to take care of her at the same time. And out of the blue, people just started showing up at the house, people we hadn't contacted. I remember one morning I get this text message that says, leaving Indianapolis, we'll be there in 9 hours. And I go, well, who the heck is this? Is all I have the phone number. And I'm going, okay. And I showed it to my wife, and it was her tent mate from Baghdad. Somehow,
wow.
I guess all these Aerovac and Air Force nurses and her old group commander figured since they hadn't been hearing for her, something's wrong, and they're coming to Pennsylvania to find out what's going on. And I had Air Force nurses in my house, along with my wife's sister for the last 3 weeks, helping me take care of her because I was struggling hard. And we had never asked for it. God sent that to us. It was the most beautiful thing that you can imagine, that people were praying for us. And even though it wasn't what we were kind of asking for, God knew what was best for us, and He sent them. It was the most incredible testament to our Lord that I have ever experienced in my life.
Wow.
And you know, people think I'm crazy. I've talked to a few people who don't walk the same walk that we do, and I called her a Disney girl. You know, she went through the horrors of war. You know, she felt a lot about injustice in the world, was horrified by the way people acted, what was going on in the world. and also what she experienced in trying to bring all these young men back alive, and every mission praying to God that she would get it done, and she did. She had been in Somalia in January, right after the Battle of Mogadishu, and she paid the price psychologically for it. And I think this is going to sound crazy to you, or to some people, but I believe our Lord was merciful to her and took her because he knew what was coming, and he knew she wouldn't be able to handle it anymore.
I've talked to some people who would agree with you. I understand that, and you're probably right. You're probably correct.
The other blessing, when I think about it, is that, in my lifetime, I'm going to be 59 this year. I've had two amazing women as wives. Both of them died for cancer. I've taken care of both of them as best as I could at the end. And that's another testament to the Lord. How many men get two wives that totally love them in their lifetime? People underestimate the power of prayer and the love of God. They really do.
Man. You can't imagine what you've been going through, but for you to have your faith and for you to still be strong in that faith is such an inspiration for me, and I know it has to be for other listeners out there, because what you've gone through is something that is a nightmare scenario for most of us.
Not once, but twice.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I lost my wife, my first wife, Cheryl, right at the beginning of the invasion of Iraq. I was getting CCAT teams ready to deploy to the Middle East, and she passed away then. And I met my wife through the Air Force because she was a CCAT nurse in the reserve, and I was the pilot unit leader at the time. So I had a lot of contact, and that's how I met her. But I'm telling you, God acts in ways that we can never even possibly imagine. And you got to give him the chance, because you may be praying for one thing, and he's saying, no, that's not what you need. I'm going to give you what you need.
That's right.
Because I have other plans. And
they don't line up with what we plan on most of the time.
That's for sure.
No,
and if you're like me, it's the hard way. You learn. But just watching people's response from the interactive chat to what's going through my mind is to what you've gone through is something that while you remain in the Lord, He will build you up and you will be at a stronger point in your faith than ever before each day that goes by. And you're I don't want to sound cliche but you're over the hill. You're over the hard stuff. If you're still of sound mind after going through what you've been through, nothing on this earth can take away your peace of mind, your faith, and your walk. Not that you should sit back and relax, but you've been tested. You've been
through the fires of hell, for sure.
I have been, but the thing that puzzles me, and I've been trying to read up more about it, and I wish one of your religious people that, one of your pastors or something, and it's, I always wonder, okay, I know I'm going to have somebody tell me in the back of my brain what it is I'm to do next. But it's, how because I pretty much muddled through all this. I mean, with God's help, I've muddled through it. But, how do you know what God's will is and what he wants you to do? And the appropriate filter for figuring that out.
I asked the same question.
A little bit. What's that?
I asked that same question to Pastor Langford this past week. I asked Pastor Langford. I said, "How do you know? How do you know?" And that's a great question. How do you know it's God's will? How do you know? What is God's will for you? You know, what's the filter?
I don't have that answer. I've been looking in the Bible for that, to be quite honest. And I don't pretend to be any expert at all. I'm still learning.
Well, one thing I know is to pray that each day that we do the Lord's will and not our own, and that's one basic biblical way that I know of.
My goodness, though, if I can ask, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. She died last week. Your wife?
Yeah, she passed away on Wednesday at Penn State Medical Center.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we just talked a few weeks back.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. After listening to Chris Putman and a few others on supernatural issues and reading Nancy Missler's article on spiritual warfare, it's like Nancy put it a real good way. Satan doesn't give a rat's behind about the Sunday go-to-meeting people who live in the flesh the rest of the week, because he already has them. But for those listeners out there who are having a hard time, Nancy talks about how the more you walk with God, it's like putting a big target on yourself. It's like a big kick-me sign.
Yep.
And we were trying to walk as hard as we could with the Lord. We went to that Bible prophecy conference that we heard about, and after that is when everything started going wrong with her. And the harder we prayed, the more we read the Bible, the more it just seemed like it just kept coming harder and harder. And it took over. We were sitting down with her doctor over at Penn State, who they have a really good integrative complementary alternative physician over there, and we were working on every metabolic pathway that you can think of. We were throwing the kitchen sink at this, and this thing just went right around it. So it was going to happen. And I don't say that cavalierly. I think there was a spiritual component to it. I don't know whether it was the Lord taking her, which I think he finally did, but somebody was coming after her hard. And it was trying her. Because she, in the end, she was more worried about me than she was of herself. She questioned God as to why this was happening to me again. And I told her, I sat down kneeling at her chair telling her, this is God's will. This is what God has decided I need to do. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter in the end. God picked me to do this, and I'm going to do what he wants me to do. I made a vow to God in church that I would, take this woman and, love her to the end and take care of her to the end. And, when you do that with the Lord and you stay by him, he's going to take care of you. And it's not a matter of it's fair or anything. Of course, who cares whether it's fair? It's what's right and what God asked you to do is really what it basically comes down to.
In my conversation with Pastor Langford, he did say that, the more obedient you are and the greater works that you do, the further down the path you go, is Satan is not going to mess with the people who are already who are partying and having a Mardi Gras every day. Satan's going to go after the people who pose a real threat and who are walking the walk of
right.
God.
He's not seeking to devour those who he's already devoured.
So exactly. So what you said certainly makes a lot of sense. Now, it's probably with God's mercy that he's embraced your wife. Now you still have a job to do. Would it be? I don't want to invade your privacy, but do you feel like sharing with the listeners your first name so people can pray for you?
My first name is Greg.
Okay. I mean, I didn't want to remind people because I remember.
But
I remember meeting you.
Honestly,
and right.
I came on because I thought I wanted to talk to you all the night, or when you had your first open line, because I thought it was really important to the listeners that may be struggling, that God is loving and merciful, and things don't always work out the way you ask for Him, but in the end, you can feel His love if you stand with Him and you walk with Him. And I don't mind sharing my name. I don't mind sharing that at all, because it's an important part of getting the word out about our Lord. If there's anybody out there with any questions in their mind or who are struggling, do not. You go to Nancy Missler's website and look at her series of blogs on hard times from her book Dark Night, and read them, and read about the words of Job and Elijah and Paul and Stephen and what they went through and how their total surrender, even though it may not ended up the way they wanted or the way they would have liked, they remained faithful. And in the end, they're with the Lord, and that's all that really matters, isn't it?
Absolutely. And amen. You said that very accurately. Look at Job, look at Daniel, look at Peter. These men did not, get a magic carpet ride from birth to heaven. They had to go through the most difficult trials of different kinds, from loss of families to loss of their own life, if not to obey the government, and for a number of reasons, all for their test of faith. And they are the examples of faith that we need to look up to in the Scriptures. And Greg, I want to thank you for calling in and sharing tonight with us your story.
At the end of the program.
You're an inspiration, and your faith is something to be looked up to. And I hope people are moved by your call tonight, and that they continue on their path.
I certainly am. Yeah. Go ahead, Greg.
Yep. Good night, and everybody take care. God bless you both.
Greg, thank you so much for sharing, and God bless you, my friend.
We'll be in touch.
Yep. Take care. Have a good night.
You too.
That'll do it for us tonight, folks.
Yes, tomorrow we will be here, just you and me. Thursday, Paul McGuire will be joining us. And Friday, Pastor Langford and Steve Quayle will be joining us. Following week, we will have Tom Horn on, and we'll get into the next week's schedule as we move on closer to the weekend. Stay safe out there, everybody. Have a good night. Until tomorrow, God bless.